Chapter 8: The Purpose of Village Scale. One of the most important questions in designing a resilient human community is deceptively simple. How large can a community grow before it stops functioning as a community and becomes an anonymous system? Anthropology, sociology, and urban planning have all grappled with this question for decades. Interestingly, several independent fields have arrived at very similar answers. When we examine the research closely, a consistent pattern emerges. Human beings function best in nested social layers, and healthy settlements tend to mirror those layers in their physical design. One of the most influential researchers on this topic is the British anthropologist Robin Dunbar. Dunbar studied the relationship between brain size and social group size among primates. He discovered a strong correlation between the size of the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for social cognition, and the number of relationships a species can maintain. When Dunbar applied this relationship to humans, he estimated that the average person can maintain about 150 stable social relationships. This figure became widely known as Dunbar's number. A stable relationship in this context does not simply mean recognizing someone's face. It means understanding how that person relates to others in the group. Maintaining this kind of social awareness requires significant cognitive effort. As groups grow larger, the brain eventually struggles to track the web of relationships necessary to sustain trust and cooperation. When a community exceeds this threshold, informal reputation systems begin to weaken, and societies often compensate by introducing formal rules, hierarchy, and bureaucracy. Dunbar's research did not stop at the number 150. He also observed that human relationships tend to form layered circles of increasing size, each corresponding to a different level of emotional closeness and cooperation. The innermost circle usually consists of around 5 intimate relationships, close family members or lifelong friends who provide emotional support. Beyond that lies a circle of approximately 15 trusted allies, often the people we collaborate with most closely. A broader group of around 30 to 50 people forms the layer where meaningful discussion and shared decision-making can still occur. Finally, the outer circle of roughly 150 individuals forms the largest group in which everyone can know one another personally. These layers appear repeatedly across human cultures. Hunter-gatherer bands often average between 120 and 180 individuals. Human beings did not evolve in anonymous megastructures. For the vast majority of our history, we lived in bands and villages small enough for persistent recognition. In such environments, identity was relational, not statistical. One's absence was noticed, one's contribution was visible, memory of character accumulated over time. This dynamic is key for keeping both the parasite and the orphan in view. Organizations in a variety of contexts often mirror this pattern. Military companies tend to cluster around similar numbers. Many religious communities, monastic orders, and traditional farming villages stabilized at roughly the same scale. Even modern organizations occasionally rediscover this limit. Some companies intentionally cap the number of employees in a building around 150, recognizing that beyond that size, informal trust networks begin to deteriorate. This research has profound implications for anyone attempting to design new social systems. If the goal is to create communities that rely primarily on trust, reputation, and shared culture rather than heavy bureaucracy, then human cognitive limits must be taken seriously. Communities that grow too large inevitably shift toward impersonal systems of control, and this is where parasites thrive. Interestingly, similar insights appeared decades earlier in the field of urban planning. In the early 20th century, American planner Clarence Arthur Perry developed a planning concept known as the neighborhood unit. Perry was concerned with the social fragmentation that often occurred in rapidly growing cities. He believed that healthy urban life required neighborhoods small enough for residents to form meaningful social ties and large enough to support essential services such as schools and parks. Perry proposed that cities should be organized into neighborhoods designed around a central school and community facilities. These neighborhoods would typically serve between 5,000 and 9,000 residents, but within them smaller clusters would form around streets, courtyards, and local gathering spaces. His model emphasized walkability, shared public spaces, and clear boundaries between neighborhoods. Streets would be designed to encourage social interaction while minimizing through traffic that disrupted community life. While Perry was primarily concerned with urban design rather than cognitive psychology, his observations align surprisingly well with Dunbar's later findings. In practice, large neighborhoods often break down into smaller clusters of people who interact regularly: friend groups, blocks, associations, and shared activity groups. These clusters tend to fall within the same ranges Dunbar described: small groups of 5 to 15 people cooperating closely, broader circles of 30 to 50 for decision-making and events, and a larger community where most residents recognize one another. When social and physical design align, communities tend to feel intuitive and stable. Households cluster around shared courtyards or small greens. Several of these clusters form a neighborhood with shared facilities and governance structures. Multiple neighborhoods combine into a village where everyone is still within walking distance of a central commons. Farms, forests, and fields surround the village, preserving agricultural land while keeping homes close enough together to sustain daily interaction. The key insight from both Dunbar's research and Perry's planning theory is that human communities function best when they respect natural social scales. When settlements grow too large or become too dispersed, the bonds that sustain cooperation weaken. Conversely, when communities remain within human cognitive limits, trust networks flourish, conflicts are easier to resolve, and social life becomes richer and more resilient. At village scale, the vulnerable do not become permanently invisible. Social feedback loops are immediate rather than abstract. Contribution is not mediated solely through market metrics, but through lived interdependence. Conflict remains containable. Leadership remains observable, preventing the rise of the parasite. Cultural drift is detectable before it becomes systemic. This is not romantic nostalgia. It is behavioral ergonomics. Large centralized systems attempt to solve social strain through policy, surveillance, or incentive manipulation. This is where parasites love to hide. Village-scale systems solve strain through proximity, memory, and reciprocal obligation. The smaller scale does not eliminate complexity. It localizes it. Each village is large enough to sustain culture, redundancy, and economic activity, yet small enough to remain relationally coherent. No one disappears into anonymity. No one becomes structurally indispensable.